Hi, it's Kevin Lebates here, and I promised Corey I would make a video where I looked at some of the remarkable insights that Satoshi Nakamoto showed when he set up the Bitcoin system. So, remembering that this is now a decade old, I just want to draw attention to some of the particular parts that I think are very, very well thought out. Now, obviously, nobody can see the future, and nothing in the system is perfect, but there's an awful lot worth looking at. So the first thing to look at, I think, is the coin issuance system. This idea of having these blocks generated every 10 minutes on average and giving a reward, but not making it a constant reward, but rather having the amount dropping down. So the reason why this is very clever is because I think Nakamoto saw that over time more and more people were going to join the system as miners, and as a result there would be more participants who were expecting to or hoping to get the reward, and the reason why they would be joining is because the value of the coins created was going to increase, and as a result, if the reward had stayed fixed at 50 coins per block, the amount or the financial value of each mined block would just continue to rise and rise and rise. And so by having the halving every few years, you're reducing the amount of coins, and therefore you're compensating for the increase in the value of those coins. Now, of course, halving every 2 years isn't perfect, and he had no way of knowing at what rate adoption would happen and what the market value of the Bitcoin would become over a year, 5 years, 10 years. But I'm pretty sure he must have sat down and run some numbers through a spreadsheet. Now, I think in hindsight, it might have been better to go more for a three-quartering rather than a halving, or possibly having the event occur over longer periods of time. But I'm not even 100% convinced of that myself, because who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's the first really insightful thing. The next really insightful thing was this idea that people could just create as many Bitcoin addresses as they liked, and in fact the encouragement to only use addresses once where possible. So this is the equivalent of these throwaway credit card numbers, where if you go with one of the next-gen banks, you can actually dynamically generate a credit card number for a purchase and then never use it again, which means you avoid the risk of credit card fraud, and that's baked into the Bitcoin system, so that's very clever too. Then there was this idea of using Merkle trees in order to store the validity of transactions, so that you can more quickly verify that a transaction actually did fit into the full blockchain. And Merkle trees are used quite widely in Ethereum now. So there's another piece that really insightful. Next one I would say is the idea of having a script for a transaction rather than having just a simple balance system. So again, this is what Buterin took from Bitcoin and turned into smart contracts in Ethereum. But for Bitcoin, I don't think having put in a more evolved scripting system would have made sense, because Bitcoin is fundamentally focused on these coin transactions. But Nakamoto recognized that just having a simple increment or decrement balance function was not going to be enough, and that there would be a need for things like multi-signing transactions and having conditional transactions or time-locked transactions and stuff like that. So also very, very insightful to not just go for the simple, easy, quick way of setting things up. Then let's see, what other bits? So there are some things where I think he was maybe a little bit overly paranoid. For example, the fact that your public ECDSA key is hidden in a Bitcoin address by using not one but two different hashing algorithms, SHA-256 and RIPE-MD160. And there he was guarding against one of these hashing functions getting broken. Of course, if SHA-256 was broken, then the whole mining process would break down too. So I think there he hadn't fully considered the balance. But the whole addressing system is interesting as well. The fact that your ECDSA public key is kept hidden up to the point that you actually try to spend the coins that you own. So that kind of reduces the attack vector for any hackers to try and crack your public-private key pair. And again, you know, he's put a lot of thought into keeping this system secure. Then this also provides for the pseudo-anonymous nature of Bitcoin, the fact that your Bitcoin address is not easily linkable to a particular person, and also tying back into these use only once addresses. That makes the whole transaction flow a bit more complicated, makes it a bit harder for people to trace the flow of funds through the system. Now, of course, law enforcement and governments don't see this as a positive, but privacy advocates do. So, and it's clear from Nakamoto's paper that he's more on the privacy advocate side rather than the governments and law enforcement. So not unexpected that that would be there. So these are lots of little features that just crop up in Bitcoin that show that an immense amount of thought must have gone into it. It's not the kind of project that you sit down on a Friday evening and think, instead of going to the pub, I know what, I'm going to invent something in the computing space. This has to have been something that Nakamoto thought about for a long, long time, because I don't think even the world's most brilliant genius would be able to dream this stuff up in a short space of time. And of course, at this point, I have to say that all the components were actually all previously out there, some of them dating back to the 50s or 60s, and most of the work actually being done in the 80s. So it's not that he invented everything from scratch, but rather that he saw all these components. It's like walking into a hardware store and seeing all the stuff there, and everybody is just building ordinary normal stuff, and he saw that, hang on, I can actually put all these things together and I can make something amazingly different and new and valuable. So I'm very grateful to him, because it's Bitcoin and blockchain has been one of the most interesting things I've ever looked at in my life. And if you haven't got involved in actually looking at how all the pieces function, then I really heartily recommend it, because it has an awful lot to offer. Anyway, there you go. A very quick video, or rather me speaking very quickly this time, going over all sorts of insights shown in the Bitcoin system. Hope you found that interesting. See you in the next video soon. Bye for now.